Good morning. Welcome. This is your Consciousness Transformation and Ascension Guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. So, this is an interesting topic, and it came actually out of a meditation, a couple of meditations, several meditations that have been going on through the past week, and other kind of insights that have come along the way. So we have, we talk a lot about the new energies. We talk about, activations and light codes and new earth grids. And we've seen it and understood it for a long time. But what does that really mean, right? It feels good, feels great. But in all, practical terms, we're like, well, what do we do with that, right? What do we do with that except, we flow with it. But here's the thing. So it was interesting that the insight that I had in it, sometimes the best insights I have come from something out of, in meditation that has nothing to do with which I think has nothing to do with what I'm meditating about or doing my energy shifting or clearing about. Good morning, Gloria. But usually this, like, some big epiphany comes and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't even looking in that direction, but okay, well, obviously it was important for me to know, and whatever the context was, maybe I should look at that more closely, right? So I was looking around I was in this new place, in a different place, and it was so incredibly breathtakingly amazing, right? And it's birthing creation. Like, so, what it made me think of was when you see the leaves when they first bud on the trees in the spring, when they're that bright, what I call like new birth green, right? Same thing with, plants first, coming out of the ground and all that kind of stuff. So this entire existence that I was looking at, I guess we could call it new earth, we call it whatever it is. It's what's next, what we're creating to go next as this, falls away. And it was like just incredible. It's a completely different construct, right? It's the same but different. And yeah. Just say you could taste colors and whatever. It was just a completely different construct. Anyhow, so I look around, and as I'm sort of focusing in, right, and easing myself into it, I realize I'm like I have my head, sort of like my head, the equivalent of my head, sticking out of the ground. And I'm looking around, and there's a whole bunch of us that are doing the same thing. And I'm like, well, this is really odd, sort of like gophers sticking their head out of the hole kind of thing. And then I realized, oh, it's sort of like us birthing ourselves into this next whatever. Good morning, Anne. So and so I said, okay. So I was noticing that, and nobody was fully out, and I didn't really even ask what to do. I simply knew that what was important was to shift how we were doing that, right? So I didn't even really consciously have like a thought about it as I was doing, looking around there. I basically opened up the hole, and then I was like, well, it doesn't even have to be a hole because it can literally just be a full imprint, instantaneously there, even if I'm still instantaneously here. So I'm going to get a little bit out there today. Oh, but see, I'm starting yawning. It was just really interesting, that the yawning, spiritual energy shifting kind of thing. So I was looking around, and then I was like, okay, so, well, what is there to do? What is there to do here? And it was like, well, I just sort of knew to open that hole, to allow that shifting to just be there. Like I said, sort of like an imprint there, as well as being here. And I was helping others to remember that too, right? And then, and then I came back, and I was like, like the first time it came up, It's like, that's very interesting. I wasn't really sure what to do with it or what to understand, but did understand where it was, that it was, this next world or whatever. And then I let it sort of sit. I put it on the spiritual shelf, and I came back to it the next day in meditation. And I was like, yeah, so let's get some clarity on that. Let me set myself to have clarity and remembrance on what there is to be and what there is to do, um, what there is to shift, and what are we waiting for? Because it was like we were at the moment of birth, and yet we were still a little bit waiting. So as I was going into meditation that day, I like suddenly saw, very interestingly, the Easter Island heads. I don't know if you know this, but the Easter Island had statues, the big heads. They discovered a while back that they actually have full bodies then they were buried under the ground, and only their heads were sticking out. I was like, oh, that's exactly like what I saw, only it was us. And then I was like, okay. So then I was like, okay. So then I was showing this stuff to myself, and expanded consciousness, and it was like, okay, so how do we come into this world? How do we come into Earth when we embody here? Well, we come in the standard way, head first, right? And what's the head? The head's where the mind is, the ego, the sort of the control center of the ego in the 3D. And that's what sort of leads our creations and the way we interact and what we do here, right? And that's been traditionally what it's been. So the guidance, and I said, okay, so what I'm feeling is that we're being guided, well, obviously, to do this new place the way we envision it, as we envision this place, like as it was Lemuria in the beginning. What is there for us to do in terms of us coming in? And it was funny because the word imprinting just kept on coming in, just imprinting there. And it's like, okay, so it would be the equivalent of what we're talking about, like allowing ourselves to come in mind, heart, and gut all together, right? So the mind, the heart, and the gut all aligned and coming in together. So what in 3D, what represents how we come in, right? We come in through this when we embody, like I said, the standard way is with the head out first, and it's through this tight opening that it's almost like it doesn't really seem like it should fit, right? So it's like we squeeze ourselves in, and just think about that. What we do with this piece of our consciousness that comes into here, it's like we squeeze ourselves into the body, and we spend the entire time we're here learning or sort of like having friction with the body on how to deal with it, how to, like otherwise we wouldn't have disease and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, what if we just created and imprinted, and there we were, right? What if we didn't need to be born through an externalization thing? What if, and then it's like, okay, well, it's so funny because I'm like seeing all these bigger things come up in the questions. Yeah. Hey, Nicole. Yes, mind, heart, and gut all in agreement. Yeah. So all together, all aligned. And so I'm like, okay, so, and to do that is like sort of just putting our entire being there. Now, it's not like we're getting rid of individuality completely. It's almost like my understanding was that it's having separate representations and yet still staying together, which is really a lot of the energy of what I have felt in the past and talked about as the original intention of the divine feminine, or what people call Sophia or Shekinah or whatever. And so it was like, okay. And so we had changed that, and it was purposeful for how we wanted to do it here. And so it's like, okay, so, but we're so unused to doing that. We're now in this habit of when we incarnate here, that's what we do. And it's like, okay, so we've gone through this, and it's almost like we created these portals to shift through. It's really challenging because I don't have the words. I just have the understanding. And so Earth will be going away. It's just almost sort of like a doorway that we walk through, right? To get to this other, it's like we created this really like multi-dimensional step into a different form of duality that is like sort of a a connection of some sort, right? Which I don't have much more clarity on that right now than that. But here's the thing. So we are so, and it's not like this is all of us. What's in our bodies is such a small part of us, and we're all connected and all that kind of stuff that we talk about all the time. But it's almost like we are creating new rules of embodiment for this next earth, this next duality existence that's connected to, I don't want to call it new earth, but I want to say it's connected to earth as we created it. And it's like we're passing through because this is what we created to go next. And there's a reason to the bigger project. Like I always talk about that there's like a bigger project out there, right? So there's this, like we always think of Earth as, oh, this is the be all end all. It's not. It's a very small piece of a much bigger project. So the Earth piece is getting completed, and now we need to move to the next phase, which is this next thing, right? This next creation, and through Earth, Earth being like sort of the portal. And I feel like that's what Earth is going to become, not as it has been in the experience of saturation, but almost just simply a doorway that you flash through and going into this other dimension or creation or whatever. So interesting. Because I feel like that's what we've been doing and giving ourselves, right? We've been allowing ourselves, and we call them light activations. I just feel like they're an openings to remembrance in pieces, and it is very purposeful so that we allow different parts of ourselves to align in the way that it'll go through this doorway. To be able to imprint, embody, exist in this new place and create it the way we intended. How's that for clear? So my understanding from all of that's important to relay is for us to align that mind, heart, and gut, right? To have the ego understand its job has been to be separate and independent and exploring duality and individuality and exclusion. And that is only a piece of the whole puzzle. It's only a little piece of how it all fits together, the whole symphony. And then the heart and the gut, the heart is sort of like our existence of being, right? And the creation of our soul from the seed of our soul. And the gut is the remembrance of the whole picture. So in our chakras, we want to say like a lot of times we say the third eye, which is partially it, but it's actually really the alignment of all the chakras to come into that remembrance. The gut is where, the compulsion of knowing what's coming from that full soul and higher. And then the third eye is often to see it. What I always call the heart, there's a fourth, like what I see is a fourth eye in the heart. It's the eye of the heart. And it's almost like we're aligning the eye of, the eye of the ego, the eye of the heart, and the eye of the third eye, the eye of the gut, right? And understanding and remembrance. So when we can do that, and we practice that, we allow that and we set ourselves to that, then nothing is overpowering the other, and we can allow ourselves to simply shift over instead of having to be birthed in a way that is uncomfortable, that is claustrophobic, for lack of a better term. But that was all part of what we wanted to experience, so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we're now ready to shift to something new, and it's really important, and I can't quite get yet. This is why I was sort of hesitant to talk about this today, because I'm like, well, I'm not quite getting all of it yet. And I was like, well, yeah, go talk about this. And I really was trying to shelf it. And I woke up like early this morning. I was like, talk about this. I'm like, okay, maybe it'll make sense to some who are watching outside of space and time, or even live, who have who've had other understandings, because it sort of does tie together a lot of these things that we talk about, seeing a new Earth grid. Well, the new Earth grid is really the grid of the creation of this different existence. And it's not necessarily Earth, it's from Earth. It's almost like Earth was the seed of it. And boy, it was a long germination period, but it really wasn't, because time doesn't really exist. So, we could talk about this and make a whole sci-fi movie about the whole thing. So Good, Nicole, makes sense to you. That's great. So it's for us to really get to that place of alignment and to really come to that place of awareness of what is ruling us in any given moment, right? Is it the ego? Because that's really what rules us most of the time here. This part of us that's here. And it's to come all into alignment with all this is my understanding. So that's the important part, is to have all of this come into alignment, to have it all in completion, to have it all working together and in unison, and in this place of unison, unity, and unconditional love, or as much unconditional love as we can remember, is for us then to say, okay, I'm going to hold this now and I will imprint. Again, it's funny, that's the closest word that I can get, into this other place, this new place, this next place, in all together. We're going to do this all together. And that'll create a completely different experience. Or that creates a different experience, which we love. And so a lot of it's challenging to discuss, because if you've seen the movie Arrival, and it's like I see everything is circular, and which is why I love the movie Arrival so much. It's like, oh my gosh, I started seeing that a while ago, like how time really isn't the way we think it is, and it's really not. It's really a construct, but really everything is simultaneous, and Arrival sort of made it circular, but in a way it can be from perspective. So it was like, so it's almost like, well, I see this whole thing in beginning and end, and circulation. So so all I would say is go on into meditation. If you're doing meditation work, do your guidance work, do your journaling work, go to sleep at night and say, okay, let me see this. Let me remember it. And it's not to learn about it. It's like, let me remember this. Let me remember what there is for us to do next. Let me remember what there is for me to do next. And it's not specific to, where to shop this week. That's very, in the very 3D sense. This is much more that alignment, because once we hold ourselves in that alignment, then everything we do will align in that. And it will shift everything here. So it's almost like taking our eyes off of like all the nitty gritty stuff and looking at the bigger picture. And when we remember, and it goes back to what we've been talking about forever, and I talk about it here, Sarah C. Gavagnoni and I talk about it on our Ascended World on Mondays. And it's all about going inside and allowing ourselves to, come into that completion, right? Come into that alignment, and asking what there is for me to do, what there is for me to say, not what should I, because that's all ego, right? That's all leading with this, the head. And when we say, okay, what is there for me to do? Let me see, let me remember. Let me be shown, back to me in a way that I can understand or remember, that I'll be able to comprehend it and act it out, actually exist in it. That's the way for us to go, right? Because as we start to do that and we all come into those alignments, a lot of things will just my understanding is a lot of things will automatically come into completion. That we think have so many things so far to go, that there's so much to resolve, there's so much, and there is, but it's funny because now I look at, Sarah C. Gavagnoni and I are putting out a 28 Days of Forgiveness program that starts on February 1st. If you haven't seen that, go over to the Ascended World. It's 28 days, $28, and it's a freaking deal because it's like huge how we've done this. I'm very excited. But we were decided to do it. Just came up like 2 weeks ago. And we're like, okay. And it makes so much sense because we've been talking about forgiveness. But the whole thing is, and we're going, oh my gosh, and we're going through all, creating the workbook and the videos and everything else. And it's like, wow, this is so much. And it's like literally at the end of the day, I am wiped because of the energetic shifts that go through in doing this, right? And I'm going, and a part of me, like even I think it was last night, was like, why are we doing this in 28 days? This is like huge stuff that we're dealing with. Huge amounts of apology, forgiveness, acceptance, embracing and love and it's like huge topics every day. And I'm like, what is this about? And it was like this morning when I woke up and all this one just dumped in, like, yeah, talk about this. And then I saw how it connects because it's like, okay, yeah, if we keep our eyes on this alignment, right? Then the forgiveness, the apology, all that completion and releasing just disappears and it becomes really simple, really easy, which is what we're doing. And so very excited about that because then it's like, oh, of course, now it's like, now I see how it's so easy when I'm going, oh my gosh, this is so much. Because, there's a part of it was thinking, and I could feel it shifting out. And we had a lot of stuff shifting, have had a lot of stuff shifting through while we've been working on the program, which has been great. But, that's, and like, I say forgiveness. Well, sort of has become a cliche in terms of self-help and everything else. However, it really has to do with, at the end of the day, the perception of us and the understanding of us being the creators of this existence and of creating the duality at this level of density. And all of the things that it has grown from and entailed, all the things that have grown from it or been put into existence from it. Yeah, Sarah says it's intense for sure. It is. But, and all the things incorporated into this, it's like we have like these parts of us that are sort of a little resentful, sort of a little ashamed, right? Like all these emotions that we've created with the ego, with the mind, ego ruling our existence in the embodied, right? And so like we have those remembrances in the bigger part of our consciousness and we can sort of get the grasp of them here. And then we have these judgments about them, right? And so we hold them. And so if you think about all the energy, and that's what Sarah and I have been discovering is all the energy that we hold to all of these things that are judgments within us about ourselves. We say it's about other people, but it's about ourselves. It's about our part in that creation and stuff and our part in it, period. And if we would just go ahead and release all of that, it helps us to align all those three things like that. It becomes so easy. So all of a sudden, like I said, I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, okay, now I understand how it all connects. And, like I was saying, like yesterday, I was thinking, wow, this is just a lot. How did we do this in 28 days? Because people, like it is a lot of stuff. However, it's like when we hold ourselves and all the people who take the class, where we can set them at the vibration because their expanded consciousness, agrees to it, that they hold the vibration of that alignment, right? So people want to call it body, mind, spirit. I'm talking about like the mind, the heart, the gut, right? All of that, all those parts of us that we've created, all in alignment, all in completion, all in unity, right? And if we hold that vibration, then all of that other stuff, all the forgiveness, the apology, the acceptance, all of that stuff comes much easier versus having to filter through the mind. So it shifts like that, bam, right? So that's what I want to get on and talk about today. It's a lot to really, conceptualize. Oh, what I started saying is go into meditation and set the intention to remember, right? Or what's even better is go to sleep. Set yourself to go to sleep and dream. Well, dream. Set yourself to go and, remember that place and see yourself going there. And what is there for me to do and what is there for me to be, and to feel that and to know what that is and to bring it back here. You can set that intention. That's some of the most powerful work that we do is in our dream state. So, I think that's all I have to say today. So we're a little short on the half hour, but that's great. That was a lot in 25 minutes. So do that this week and focus on whatever you do in terms of your practice of meditation or whatever. Focus on coming into alignment of that mind, the heart, and the gut. To be in that alignment, to be in that wholeness, right? To know that it all has a part and it's all complete at the same time. And at the same time, go over to Ascended World, sign up for our 28 days for $28. It's a great thing because after the February thing, it's going to be a lot more because we realize it is a very valuable program. So go sign up for that and join us starting the first every day for 28 days. And we've got a workbook, we've got exercises, we've got videos. It's going to be great. Very excited. But so set this first, set this alignment first. And start setting that for yourself and holding yourself in that, and then all the rest will be easy. So thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing out with this week's Living the Shift. Have a good one.